Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of 31 Fossils of December. I am going to do kind of a special episode tonight where I'm going to showcase a few fossils kind of the same series, right? So the reason I'm doing this today is because I was actually inspired by another friend, Walter Stein, who's a paleontologist, and he has a base over in South Dakota, but he has been doing his 31 Days of Christmas sort of like a fossil auction that he does. But today he was focusing on theropod teeth. So I figured that this would be a great opportunity to focus on some of my theropod teeth. That being said, I'm going to show these guys to you, and I'm going to show you this one first. So this is my largest example of a Rex tooth. Okay, so you can see it's just a partial, right? It's not the full tooth. You can see a little bit of where the root was, and then this part of the tooth would have been, if it continued, it would have gone up to the point, right? You can see on the back here, there's a nice kind of edge for the serration, right? And then the rest of the tooth is pretty much round, very roundular. So that one's very cool. And I'm going to tell you the story about each of these, but let me show you the other ones for now. So I'm going to show you the next one is my Nano Teeth. Here's my Nanotyrannus tooth. You can see how shiny it is. This is just a kind of a fragment of probably a juvenile Rex tooth or something else that I found out there at one point. But there wasn't a whole, tooth associated with it. It was just this little fragment. But this is my Nano tooth, and I just put them in the same box because I found them at the same time. But this was actually the first theropod tooth that I found. So I was really excited about this one, and there's only like a small little bit missing off the tip, and it looks like it's probably from some sort of feeding damage. Doesn't look like I broke it off or anything when I was excavating it, or in terms of how I found it. So I'll tell you about the story on this one as well. And then for my last tooth, I'm going to show you, this is my Juvenile T-Rex tooth. And this is my most recent find. Kind of an interesting story about this. So this one and this one are both the two Rex teeth that I found on my most recent excursion with Paleo Adventures out in South Dakota, and specifically in the Tooth Draw Quarry. So this is where we found, or I found these two teeth. So let me think about this for a second. Okay, these ones, okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was getting it right. Alright, so this one I found in Becca's Tooth Draw. So that's just another part of the quarry. These other two I found in Tooth Draw. So I had my most luck, I would say, in Tooth Draw. But Becca's Tooth Draw is pretty cool too. So a little bit about the formation first, and then I'll go into the stories. The formation that I found these teeth in is called the Hell Creek Formation. It extends into parts of Montana as well as North Dakota and South Dakota. It's about, Wikipedia is dating it at about 67, 66 million years old. I've seen some other sources going as late as, or as early as, late as 65.5 million years old. And it's saying that it's late Cretaceous, which is the Maastrichtian. I think I said that right. But it's sort of the latest age in the late Cretaceous. And then it goes even into some early Paleogene rocks, which is basically just the age after the Cretaceous, after the KT event, right? So Pretty good, a little bit of history about the formation. It's actually like, I want to say this right. It's alluvial. So what happened was during the Cretaceous period, it was actually an ancient riverbed. And this river extended for miles and miles. And dinosaurs and all kinds of different organisms and plant life would interact with this ecosystem, and they would, live around it, die in it. And then all of the bodies and all their teeth would get washed in with the sediments. So a lot of the stuff that you're finding there might not necessarily be, an entire skeleton, because that's all intact all the time, because sometimes a lot of those bones would have been, like spread around by like different predation or predators, or just by flooding events, and just spreading all of that organic matter around, and wherever it settled. So you have to keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're hunting in the Hell Creek Formation, because it's a little bit different than some other formations that are out there where it wasn't an ancient riverbed. It might have been like a, like a bog or a swamp or something, which is a little bit different. So you got to think that, this riverbed's attracting animals and organisms from all around, right? Because it's a great source of water. They're gonna seek refuge there. They're gonna seek nourishment, and predators are gonna come there because other herbivores are showing up, and possibly smaller predators, so they can get their own food. You can derive what happens from that interaction, but so that's a pretty good comprehensive look on the Hell Creek Formation. So what I want to start with, I think the story that I want to talk about the most, it's probably the most interesting, would be this big Rex tooth, right? So the way that you dig in tooth straw is, I'm not going to quote Walter on this, but it's basically, you have a screwdriver, and you have maybe a little X-Acto blade, and then you have, your brush. And your brush is probably your most important tool that you're going to be using out there. Because it's always, okay, for every screwdriver that you use to turn up, motion that you'd use to turn up the soil, you probably do about 30 to 40 brushes. So it's always, dig up the soil, brush, brush, brush. So the brushing does really help, though, because a lot of the times some of the stuff out there, it's not real, it's not like real wet. So like all the stuff likes to stick in conglomerates, and like it just makes everything really dusty and like hard to see. So you really do need to brush to make sure that you can get an idea for any kind of little bone fragments, or like if you're gonna hit a big bone or a big tooth or a small tooth, you want to be able to see what you're digging in, because this stuff is super fragile, and if you stick a screwdriver into it, you're just gonna break it. So it's brush, 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 and glue, glue, glue. So we also have Paleobond out there that we're using, and it's kind of like super glue, but every time you find a little bone, put a little tiny piece of or a little bit of Paleobond on it, let it dry, keep brushing away, and you want to work from the top down to try to expose those fossils, excuse me. So let me go to the story. So I'm there, and I'm doing all of the things that I just described very thoroughly, working a huge shelf down from the top of the formation to the bottom. And I just remember this thing popping out at me, and as soon as I saw it, I knew it was a Rex tooth. And it was like this little portion that was sticking out, right? So this part was still kind of sticking into like the wall part, because it was sticking up like this, if I remember correctly. So I was like, I thought it was a whole tooth, and it was just, sticking up and down. I mean, this would have been a 2-incher maybe, even almost, so. But anyway, it winded up not, and I even got scared and thought I broke it at one point, because when I went to go pull it out, thinking that it would the whole thing would come out, I only got this piece, and I was like, oh no. But it's still cool. Like, I really wanted to find a Rex tooth, and finally got to find one this year, of, you know, pretty significant size. So I'm really happy with it. One year I'll be able to find a whole one. Okay, so that's that story. Now, this one, I'm going to talk about my Juvenile T-Rex tooth. This is the latest one that I found. But this one, I was digging back his tooth straw. I was taking down a big shelf, and literally, like, I went to go start taking off another layer, and I start from the front and work my way back. But as soon as I stuck my screwdriver in and, like, freed up a bunch of pebbles, this thing came shooting right out at me. And I was like, oh, like, it was very surprising. And I was super excited when it happened, because I was like, I saw it immediately, and I was like, oh. And I picked it up and looked at it, and I'm like, yes, it's a Rex tooth. And this is, in fact, a Juvenile T-Rex. And I've got the whole thing there, even with the tip. So, really happy about that. Now, this story, this sad, sorry, sob story, this was my first time with Paleo Adventures. I was still learning how to do this, right? So I don't know, there's a little bit of an art form to learning how to dig into Hell Creek. I was still trying to learn what to look for, how to look, like if I was going too fast or too slow, really trying to gauge how quickly I was going through, you know, my sediment, and making sure that I recognized something if, you know, I did expose it. So that being said, it was literally, I dug for 3 days. I didn't find a single theropod tooth because I was going way too slow. It was literally like the 11th hour on the last day, and everybody was like, all right, make sure you sift through your material, because all the material that you take off with the screwdriver, it comes out like sometimes in big bulk conglomerate like pieces. So you want to make sure that you go ahead and sift through that, because you never know what you could be missing. And a lot of the times you'll find nano teeth, you'll find, you know, T-Rex teeth, whatever. You'll also find like Edmontosaurus spitter teeth, trike spitter teeth, all kinds of stuff. So you really want to make sure that you go through and sift that sediment. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, well, I've got a whole big pile here in front of me. So I start sifting, and I start getting into, like, I was talking to somebody while I was doing it. I just started getting lost in conversation. And it kind of just felt like I was, you know, just kind of on autopilot, right? I'm like, okay, dig, put it in the pen, sift it. Nope, nothing. All right, chuck it. And then keep doing it. Well, sure enough, I sifted, like, I don't know. I must have sifted 23, 24 shovelfuls of dirt. And, like, on the 25th one, I was, you know, just talking. I'm like, just totally lost sight of kind of what I was doing. And as I was sifting, I looked down and I saw this tooth. And I was so happy that I decided to sift, because it was literally, like I said, the end of the day. I was going to head back to Alabama or wherever I was living. And this guy popped right out at me. And I just cradled it in my hand and was, like, laughing. I was so happy. I think there's a couple of pictures of me doing that on Facebook or whatever, so yeah, but really good stories. These things are worth quite a bit of money. Typically the Nano Teeth don't sell for as much as the T-Rex teeth do, and I'm just gonna say I'm calling it a Nano Tooth because that's what Walter calls it, and I know there's people out there that are like, oh, it's, you know, the same thing, whatever, but this is my Nano Tooth. So that being said, I hope you guys liked my fossils tonight. I think I'm going to be switching gears tomorrow night and maybe showing you some invertebrate stuff. So stay tuned, and I hope you like my episode.